Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video. You all can already tell from the title that my mom has already loved my sister a little too much, and I have never been sure as to why. I've always only had a single sibling, Amber, who is just 2 years older than me. Well, so as you all can imagine, it just never made a lot of sense as to why I was treated so differently than Amber when we were so similar. I mean, we were close in ages, in looks, in our likes, dislikes, personalities, academics, and everything in between. It was never like there was a difference of sky and ground between the two of us. And honestly, even with the difference in treatment of the two of us, I had better relationship with her than I ever did with both of my parents, especially my mom. Oh God, my mom. Her resentment towards me never made sense to me in a million years. It was like she was frustrated towards me all the effing time. It was like ever since the moment I was born. She was just angry at me for some reason, as if she just didn't want me to be born, which at this point, if she told me, would make sense. Like, that is how much I crave for some sort of validation and closure from this situation. Well, her behavior towards me is very obvious every single time, and it's not different for my dad either. But at least that man is simply just cold towards me, unlike my mom, who said things to me on my face that has left scars on me for possibly forever. I still remember the very first time I kind of realized how different my sister and I were treated. It was the first day of school for me, and I watched Amber, who was a grade ahead of me, getting ready in a different school uniform and everything, with an expensive backpack, lunchbox, and water bottle, all of which were themed around her favorite cartoon characters, compared to mine, which was simply just old ragged things which I assume my mom just bought for me from Dollar Tree. I still vividly remember my sister being dropped off at the nicer school while I was dropped off at the public school. Hell, the difference was even noticeable to Amber, who asked Mom why I wasn't going to the same school with her and having the same things. That is when I heard it for the first time. You deserve better, sweetie, she said. For little Amber and I, this statement was kind of a huge thing to comprehend, let alone to argue with her about. And so, even though it didn't make sense to me, her comments, which slowly worsened, started manifesting into my brain, and by the time I was in high school, I started suffering with terrible mental health issues. This didn't stop my parents from being terrible, though. My mom was horrible as always. My dad was as negligent and cold as he possibly could be, not just towards me, but towards Amber, too. It was like he was just so very disinterested in our lives. He simply just did what my mom did while drowning himself in his work. So my mom kind of had dominance, and boy, did she take full advantage of that. It was like every time she saw me feeling upset, depressed, miserable towards anything, she saw it as a chance to want to make things worse. And she took it fully. And although that was depressing as hell, watching my mom give my sister all the warmth, comfort, and tender, balmy love, her completely different behavior and her coldness towards me, especially during my vulnerable times, was devastation. But I would be wrong if I said that wasn't one of my biggest forces to better myself and bring myself where I am today, meaning my college. You see, it was last year when Amber found out she had gotten into an Ivy League school to pursue her degree. Needless to say, I was so very happy for her. Amber has become a beautifully smart, caring, and sweet girl who was a completely different person than my mom was. She knew how to show people empathy and be caring towards them. And I just knew she would be an amazing addition to the lives of people wherever she went. The only problem here was she did not get a scholarship. That is when my mom blew my mind away. She pulled out a trust fund with money for her that not only covered her education, but also left her with some that would allow her to pay for her accommodations. Not only that, She threw this huge party with over 60 people invited. Hell, Amber openly even admitted that day that she didn't know half of these people, and my mom's response was that she knew who they were and wanted to show off her only successful daughter. Ouch. It was like for the first time my heart truly hurt at a comment that my mom made because she knew my aspiration was to get into an Ivy League university as well. And even I knew that what she said was intentional. This party happens and it's a huge deal, you all. Everyone has a blast, and I would be wrong if I wouldn't admit that my mom actually did a great job. But hey, as an 18-year-old, I had my own questions and wondered if she would do the same for me once I got into college, and guess what the answer is? Drum rolls, a no. I still vividly remember the day I got my acceptance letter. I opened it on a video call in front of my sister. One by one, I saw that I had gotten into not just one, but three Ivy League schools that I had enrolled into, and feeling like I was on top of this world would be an understatement here, because I was beyond that. Hell, I had even gotten a full scholarship to one of them, which was my top choice of university. I still remember how happy Amber was for me and how happy I was for myself. I think my happiness was so much that I just couldn't contain it in myself and decided to go tell my mother about it, who I think already found out through my sister. Her reaction was as bland as it could be. She simply said, "Good for you," as she just resumed doing her work. And although I should have seen it coming, I lost my shit. It was like this was the straw that broke the camel's back, and I flew off the handle. I started berating her for her lack of enthusiasm, telling her that I was tired of her treating me like a second-class citizen, and done I was with her. She argued back with me as she sat beside me on the couch. Her voice was firm, as if she knew the day of this discussion would come sometime or the other. She just told me how, in her eyes, my birth was never enough for her. According to her, the moment I was born, her life fell apart, and that she didn't consider me as her daughter, unlike Amber, and how I'll never be enough for her. She told me that the moment she fell pregnant with me was the moment my dad started his affair. And so this pregnancy was nothing but misery for her in her eyes, and the birth of me was worse because my dad never wanted to be connected to her like he used to be before I was born. After telling me this, she simply got up and left. I was left stunned, with my mouth on the jaw. It was like I just had no words, just tears in my eyes. I knew if I stayed back a moment longer, I'd go crazy. So, with no words, I packed up my things and made the 2-hour drive to my grandparents, who, although were happy to have me, but disappointed at how I talked to my mom and forced her to come clean to me. I wasn't feeling guilty earlier after talking to Amber, who already knew of Dad's cheating and still took my side, but seeing my grandparents' reaction just conflicted me at the slightest, which is what brings me here. So, Reddit, bring in your advice, suggestion, judgment. AITA? This situation feels like it has opened some box of lies and misery that had been shut open and kept aside for years. It all makes sense only now why my dad had been so awfully quiet for all these years. So basically, after my grandparents berated me because I argued with my mom, I told them that I never asked her to tell me about my dad's cheating. It was her who opened up to me about it. I just went on ranting about the situation, and I guess something just wasn't clicking with them, so they asked me if that was all my mom told me about. I said yes, and their faces immediately turned pale, as if they wanted to say something important. Things just didn't feel right, and so I began probing around to see if they would answer any of my questions, and eventually, my grandma broke down as she confessed to me how I was a result of my mom cheating on my dad to get revenge on him after he had first cheated on her. My dad wouldn't even realize that the baby wasn't his, but the fact that he eventually caught up to my mom's cheating after it went on after giving birth to me, he did a DNA test on me, which came back negative. Eventually, my mom came clean about the situation, and hey, guess what? My biological dad was none other than my dad's cousin, who has become estranged from them. Well, the fact that my mom hid all of this and only told only half of the story had my grandparents mad, and they all got into a huge argument wherein they gave me the contact information of my dad's cousin to spite my mom. Honestly, I can't be bothered to care about these people. But I am, for one, curious to reach out to my biological dad, which I already have, just waiting for the response. Feeling like I'm on a roller coaster ride as I type this. I actually heard back from my biological dad almost immediately, and this man was surprisingly very happy to hear from me. We spoke for a couple of days and decided to meet near my grandparents' place itself. My sister had my location and everything, so there was no need to worry. Well, we meet, and honestly, it feels great to be wanted by someone. We sit down and eat and talk about everything that has been happening. As I continue my story, coming clean to him about everything, he just seems to get a little weirded out, and by the end of it, he's full blown mad. I thought his anger was directed towards me, but oh boy, what he tells me next leaves me speechless. According to him, he and my mom had decided on giving her full custody of me since, like I mentioned, my dad's cousin was shunned by the family. This man would send child support monthly and extra cash on my birthdays or on special occasions. If that wasn't enough, remember the trust fund my mom used to fund my sister's university fees? That was supposed to be for me. My biological dad and I both sat there stunned, in complete silence as we both were just processing this information. I was conflicted more than I ever was because this man, who is so kind, is still a bad person to me for sleeping with his own brother's wife, but at the same time, my parents aren't any good either. I was thinking about all of this until he asked me if I would be willing to speak in court by any chance if he decides to sue my mom. I immediately said yes, and he thanked me. After that, we continued to catch up on our lives, and he offered me a place at his house where he lived alone. Yes, he's not married. He owns a business, and honestly, he seems to be pretty well off. I thanked him for his offer, but told him that I would like to just talk to him for a while before making any firm decisions. For now, we're going to be meeting tomorrow once again to see the lawyers. It's been a while since I last updated this post. Sorry about that. I've been busy with college, but here's an update. Not a long one, but a short one, which I consider a positive one. Well, basically, my biological dad sued my mom over all the money she misused that was intended towards me. After this situation took place, I don't know what took over my sister, Amber, but she took a DNA test as well, and guess what? It came negative. And after taking one with my biological dad and finding out it was positive, we all were shocked. Needless to say, my dad is getting a divorce from my mom, which honestly doesn't make any sense since he's been having an affair all this long himself. My sister and I have started more contact with our biological dad, and honestly, the both of us, for the first time in our lives, are feeling like we're experiencing the warmth of a true parent. As for my mom, she had to sell the house she lived in for lawyer fees and now currently lives in a rundown apartment. It's like everyone has become fed up with her and just decided to shun her for once altogether. She is now the one trying to crawl back to me. Amber, my biological dad, or whoever is ready to give her a shelter, which no one is after everything she pulled, and that is all. It's been a long journey, but I'm ready to embark on this new chapter of my life. NTA, don't even live with your grandparents. Just cut them all out at this point because they all seem like pathetic, immature people who cannot, for once, care for children. I'm so sorry you had to go through all this, OP. NTA, your mom is toxic and pathetic. I wouldn't let people like your grandparents tell you otherwise. Is there any way you can move to a relative's place or a friend's place? Please take care, OP. Me, female 19, and my older sister, female 21, don't talk. Mainly because I think she's a nasty person, so I simply don't want to be involved, but also because she's been attending uni for 3 years and has only just permanently moved back home. I bought a bag in January, a very popular one, not the designer one everyone is raving about online, but like a cargo utility type bag. When she got back from uni, I saw the same bag on her person. I was like, oh, I have that. And she didn't pay much attention. We didn't speak much more for a couple of weeks until she called me up at work and asked if I've seen her bag. She's lost it and can't find it. I hadn't, and I told her that. But she asked me the same thing every day because her debit card and ID were apparently in it. Fair enough to be stressed out, but freeze the card and go everywhere you've been and check lost property. I'd be pissed too, but I'm barely home because I stay at my boyfriend's and always work. I even let go of the fact she had our mother go through my bedroom to try and find it because I get the frustration of losing something valuable. I went into my favorite restaurant today and it turns out she works here. No problem. I started up a general chat about how she is. Is she looking forward to her festival in a couple of weeks? She then asks to go through my bag to see if it's hers. I allow it. I just can't be bothered to beef her when she's working. She then exclaims it's hers. And now I know, due to our parents' favoritism, I can't go home for a couple of weeks. Brilliant. But I know this is mine. I have pictures with it and the order reference from months ago. She's glaring and stropping and storming around, and I'm just trying to eat my food and get out of here because maybe she's having a bad day. I don't know, but I know working in service is awful sometimes, as I do as well. I don't like her, but I'm not going to make shit harder for her. So AITA for having the same bag? NTA, don't get me wrong, your sister is a total a-hole, but your parents are senior a-holes. It seems that their favoritism has caused your sister's toxic behavior. You seriously can't go home for a few weeks because of this? NTA, you literally have the receipts for your purchase. After proving it's yours, if it disappears, your sister and your parents have let their favoritism turn into theft and possible court case. We've been married 5 years and have a 4-year-old. We make good money in a medium high cost of living area. I make $185,000. She makes $70,000. Wife is a nurse but hates her job. She is considering quitting. I support her desire to quit for her mental health, but we seem to differ on what she should do afterwards. I asked her what her long-term plans are, and she said she wasn't sure if she would continue nursing or go back to school or something else. In any case, I said she can take some time to figure things out as we are financially stable. And half jokingly, I said in the meantime, it'll be nice to have a stay at home spouse that can have dinner ready all the time. Oof. Naturally, she blew up at me, calling me misogynistic, a jerk, the whole deal. Currently, we split cooking duties evenly, cooking maybe 3 days a week. We also eat leftovers and go out once or twice a week. It's a nice balance. So I told her I didn't think it was unreasonable for me to have her in charge of all the cooking. 3 days a week? Since? It's not that often. We still eat leftovers and dine out. She's going to have like 40 hours of free time back. So cooking once or twice more isn't a big ask. We already have a cleaning lady come every 2 weeks. Kid is in preschool 9 to 4:30 p.m., 5 days a week. I do all the grocery shopping. I'm not asking her to be SAHM. That does all the chores because I'm the breadwinner. I'm literally only asking her to cook an additional 1 or 2 times a week while she isn't working, but apparently that's wrong of me. So AITA for expecting my wife to be in charge of all the cooking? EH. You handle the conversation clumsily, but your wishes are reasonable. I wouldn't be okay with my partner quitting their income and not contributing more while I became the primary breadwinner. That's simply not an equal division of labor unless they are actually applying for jobs 40 hours a week. And even then, I probably wouldn't consider it equal depending on the circumstances. NTA. She acted kind of like a jerk by jumping to accusations of misogyny when it doesn't sound like sexism has anything to do with it. You are NTA. If she's going to quit her job and figure things out, she can cook while she's figuring. I applaud your willingness to support her while she figures things out. That's exactly what you should be doing as a loving partner. Asking her to pick up a larger share of the chores while she isn't working is a completely reasonable request. No misogyny required. If you are the one staying home, the same rules apply. It isn't a big ask. We already have a cleaning lady come every 2 weeks. Kid is in preschool 9 to 4:30 p.m., 5 days a week. I do all the grocery shopping. I'm not asking her to be SAHM. That does all the chores because I'm the breadwinner. I'm literally only asking her to cook an additional 1 or 2 times a week while she isn't working, but apparently that's wrong of me. So, AITA for expecting my wife to be in charge of all the cooking? EH, you handle the conversation clumsily, but your wishes are reasonable. I wouldn't be okay with my partner quitting their income and not contributing more while I became the primary breadwinner. That's simply not an equal division of labor unless they are actually applying for jobs 40 hours a week. And even then, I probably wouldn't consider it equal depending on the circumstances. NTA, she acted kind of like a jerk by jumping to accusations of misogyny when it doesn't sound like sexism has anything to do with it. You are NTA. If she's going to quit her job and figure things out, she can cook while she's figuring. I applaud your willingness to support her while she figures things out. That's exactly what you should be doing as a loving partner. Asking her to pick up a larger share of the chores while she isn't working is a completely reasonable request. No misogyny required. If you are the one staying home, the same rules apply.